we did a little bit of planning, but it's not going to be fully polished. This is more of an exploratory session to be able to, I guess, just explore the what's called, or what we're calling kind of the perfect diagnostics and automation system for residential HVAC systems. So we've prepared a bit of a presentation. We will be kind of blasting through it with audience input if we can, but let's just start with some introduction. So my name is Ben, and I do a couple different things. I'm a little bit do a little bit of work with MeasureQuick, but then I have my own kind of consultancy called Tealmaker. And previously, I've worked with Haven on kind of some of the product development exercises for indoor air quality sensing and automation solutions. And with me, I have Tim. Tim, introduce yourself.
I'm Tim Nastasio. I've been an HVAC contractor, technician, business owner, consultant, teacher, learner of the trade for 25 or so years. And I've worked a lot with some of these platforms that Ben is talking about, MeasureQuick and Haven, and just got some ideas that are just dying to get out of my head, and that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And this is going to be a session where we want audience participation. So you should be able to, in the YouTube chat, you should be able to chat, and we should be able to bring it up here. So if I, just add a little message, I can say hi, and then I should be able to promote it to the top of the stream here if it comes through. Good. And then I can, and then I can show it on screen here. So we would love for anybody that's watching to be able to, add their comments. We will promote sort of some of the contents. We'll integrate them as we go along, because there is a presentation where we're going to be adding information to our requirements document live as we go through it. So with that said, I am going to turn on the requirements document. And I'm not going to go full screen because we'll be doing some, edits to it this entire time. So I have edit access. Tim has edit access. And we're going to kind of dive into the requirements for residential HVAC systems, mostly, or not residential HVAC systems, for diagnostics systems that get attached to residential HVAC systems. So this is mostly focused on retrofit applications, where you have a lot of this is kind of inspired from Sensi Predict, where you had this kit that you install into the ductwork, and then you connect it. You connect the sensors to the HVAC system itself. You connect the sensors to the ductwork, to the suction line, the refrigerant line, and then you get a whole bunch of information that comes back to the technician or to the HVAC company, and even to the homeowner over a Wi-Fi connection. So just also wanted to say that this is in no way associated with any manufacturer right now. We're just exploring a bunch of concepts here and not promoting anything in particular. So don't, take any kind of action on this. This is not professional advice. But first, let's go into some background. So there is my background's a little bit in markets or market analysis and product management. And so there's this kind of term called market segmentation, where within a market, you do not have a contiguous group of users. You do not have people that all have the same needs. And so that is very true of what we have here with, when it comes to home automation, HVAC, HVAC diagnostics, HVAC sensors. There are so many different types of customers within that space. Some of them are really advanced users. Some of them have a lot of money. Some of them have very little money. Some of them are the real estate owners themselves. Some of them are the HVAC practitioners. Yes. And then even beyond that, beyond just kind of trying to group people into kind of okay, here's these segments that kind of create, groups that look the same. You then want to further break them down into what are called personas. So this is a framework. Using personas is one of the different ways, one of the many ways to be able to explore what is my ideal customer like, what are the users of this platform, who are the people that want to explore and take advantage of this technology. So this is just an example. I just pulled this off the internet where somebody had already made this persona for pretty much a smart home nerd, very similar to myself, who I have actually done a lot of the stuff that this person has done, how I've built my own sensors using ESP8266 chips. And I've used Arduino, I've used, Plex. I do a lot of, automation using scripting and connecting the various APIs together. So that is a very specific description of a type of person that would be a customer of this type of technology. So within our market, within kind of like looking at diagnostics and automation, there are within the building, building stock across North America, there are a lot of different buildings, and pretty much any building that's under 10,000, actually under 100,000 square feet, you're not going to find a really robust automation system in there for the most part. Anything under 100,000 square feet, there is not a return on investment for trying to install a building automation system. And so you kind of have this void where under that 100,000 square feet, which is there's a huge amount of buildings in the market that are like that, whether they're light commercial or residential. A lot of homes are not properly automated. A lot of light commercial buildings are not properly automated, and that's for a lot of different reasons. But like, we're not going to go into the full market analysis of automation and diagnostics right now. We want to first kind of like talk about the stakeholders that are within this kind of smaller audience that we're focusing on. And so there's homeowners, there's property owners and landlords, there's tenants, light commercial HVAC companies, residential HVAC companies who are kind of in that mainstream market. But I think that a lot of the people that are looking for a solution for a platform that's similar to Sensi Predict with advanced diagnostics, they're kind of in this niche of home performance. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all want something, because we're performance minded. We want the ability to look at the performance and verify the performance.
Yeah, and so, but that's a very small segment of the market right now.
Right. Yeah, it's not the mainstream is probably not thinking about that, but there is probably one or two companies in every market that would probably right now be aligned with that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of market forces that cause that specific, I guess, outcome to have happened, where there's only a couple within each market. You could probably
Right.
Somehow break down an average of per 10,000 homes in an area, maybe there's this many home performance practitioners.
Right.
And then it would be great to track that number over time and see if it changes, because a lot of the HVAC, a lot of the problems that the market faces, they're going to need home performance, companies and experts to be able to address.
Absolutely.
And so we're just going to kind of blast through some of this high level markets and product management jargon and lingo here, just so that we can kind of get down into trying to solidify what we're focusing on. And the technology adoption curve, some of you've seen this, where it's kind of this has been popularized by a few different people over the years. And this is two different graphs that are together. One is kind of this technology adoption curve down at the bottom, and then the other one is kind of on a timeline, how new technology usually gets introduced, and then what happens over the life cycle of that technology. So this is something that with a lot of different pieces of technology, if you're an early adopter, you've experienced this, where you kind of get super hyped up on a piece of technology that was really robust, and it had all these promises of what it was going to solve, and then it didn't deliver. And that not delivering, that kind of inability to live up to the hype, is pretty much the par for the course for every single product category, is that you'll always have these new entrants that kind of come in, try to solve this really big problem, try to overcome these limitations that are either market generated, or they're technologically locked as far as the limits of how that solution can work. And then it creates this kind of trough of disillusionment, or this kind of chasm here between the early adopters and early majority. And so I'm going to just change this format just a little bit again here, so that we can You just see that. So like in a market, you have innovators, early adopters, or the majority, and then the laggards there. And so I would, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was saying we got a couple comments from Ben Knopp. One of them was about Sensi Predict, and I think, and you got slides coming up,
Yeah.
about Sensi, of course. But yeah, when something gets canceled, and it didn't really, it obviously got canceled for a reason. It wasn't a hit the way they thought it was. I think right now we are in that chasm where something really cool got canceled because it didn't get enough um, traction, and now the rest of us are like, what now? And so that's why I think we're in that chasm right now.
And I'd love for anybody who's in the audience that has played around with Sensi Predict, as we're talking here, like Sensi Predict is going to be a big part of this conversation because it's going away in 2 months. It was basically the flagship of an advanced diagnostic solution on the market for HVAC practitioners, and now there's nothing left. That's actually the whole reason why I started this series, because maybe we can find through this conversation, maybe we can figure out what the system should be or what a new system should be, and then how to create it maybe, or how to help other manufacturers that are building it to be able to do it better and to avoid the mistakes of the past. And so if you have war stories as to how Sensi Predict didn't meet your expectations, love for you to dump it in the comments, and then I'll just kind of toss up those stories as we go. Because it'd be great to get the
and I would add to that, what you liked about Sensi Predict. How did you implement it in your business, and how did it help you to grow, to retain customers, to stand apart, offer services that your competitors weren't? Because I think there's a lot more of that. Obviously, we're all disappointed that it's going away. We're all frustrated, but what also could make it better. And I love Ben's comment right here. The duct probes didn't even sense moisture. That to me was probably my biggest pet peeve with it. Was like, you're almost there. We could have done so much more with moisture sensing apparatuses. So just to that point, I think we're going to get comments from both negative and positive about Sensi.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that. So I want to continue on to kind of think about, now let's define who are the customers of Sensi? Who are or Sensi Predict? Who are the customers that are trying to implement an advanced diagnostic solution that goes far beyond kind of some of these more consumer-centric diagnostic platforms that are on the market? So HVAC nerds is what I called us. Is that we're kind of we're in these innovators, we're these early adopters. And so people in the comments section, please add more that really may find a solution like Sensi, where really advanced information. Why the heck do you even need that advanced information? Like there's so many people in the market can survive without all these diagnostics. Why do you need it? And so if you throw in those comments, and we'll try to integrate them back into this requirements document as we go. So on this note, Tim, one of the things with early adopters and innovators is that you're perfectly fine to be frustrated, to be able to adopt something that doesn't really work well, where it might not be the best business decision. There's almost a bit of a hobby aspect to it, where you just it's I will trade my time, my valuable time and money, to play with something. Sometimes it works out that I'm at the top of the curve and I have something that nobody else has. But a lot of the time you just have a project that is very, very time consuming.
For me, I found myself in the HVAC nerd. I first learned about Sensi Predict actually 2020. They were the sponsor of Brian Orr's HVAC School Symposium, and that's when I first got introduced to them. And then I talked with them a little bit at AHR, which kind of shared. They came back to back that year. They were both in Orlando, and I was an early adopter of it on a few jobs. I never jump in with both feet on anything. I kind of dip my toe in it But you're right. It was time consuming to figure out how to implement it, and I was more doing it not because it was solving a pain point. I was doing it because it was cool, and I was hoping to find where its place in my business was and where it made sense financially later on. But I was doing it because it was cool, and I think that's the difference between HVAC nerds and maybe the mass contractor thinking, is that most contractors, look, we're all trying to run a business, we're trying to make money, but some of us are willing to take a little bit of a loss for a really cool idea that may turn into something big later on.
Yeah. So almost like in that like prospector space, right?
Sure.
Where
Yeah.
you would like, who knows if there's gold in them there hills. Like there's
Yeah.
somebody said there was, but it's
Yep.
not repeated. There aren't case studies. There's not a lot of I guess validation that it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got a few comments. You're seeing these, right, from Chris Hamilton?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and we'll
Yeah.
probably
Good
get into
points
those.
being made.
I'll
Yeah.
pull up those comments on screen and as we get a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure you're seeing them.
Yeah, I think Ben Knopp has a thing on the early adopters.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically they are pulling the future forward to, or pulling the present forward to meet the future.
Yeah, typically HVAC nerds are more progressive contractors or business people, kind of willing to think what's the current thinking right now, and then what's ahead, and we're looking ahead, and obviously technology is the main way that we do that.
Yeah, and I'd say that best practices, I've seen it very like that, like desiring to follow best practices and desiring to see the market shift towards best practices is a very common trait among a lot of HVAC nerds as well. So they're not just they're not just in it for the technology. They're in it because they want to see results, and the technology will help them achieve the results that can be gained through best practices in an automated manner.
Right. Yeah, I think most HVAC nerds and early adopters would love to see the mainstream industry and contractors follow suit. We're not trying to hoard this information. We're trying to keep it away from anybody. But we do recognize that the industry in a lot of ways is broken. And these best practices that we're able to implement through technology is one way that we can make that a little bit better.
Yeah. So maybe we'll leave it there for now and kind of keep diving a little bit deeper. I will. So this is a lot of text heavy stuff here. I'll maybe just change the layout again so this gets a little bit bigger. Trying to really explore the, like, why do this? Like, why is this something that needs to be solved? Because it goes beyond just kind of having a psychographic or a segment of the market or kind of a select few personas that really want something. I believe that there are some very strong reasons, some business oriented reasons, some market oriented reasons why there has to be a replacement for Sensi Predict is really what I'm saying. And so, like, smart thermostats, and in the comments, just please, like, if on any of these points that are on the screen, if you agree or disagree with them, let us know, and we'd love to discuss. But for me, like, smart thermostats, I kind of like, they keep getting smarter and smarter every year. But I don't think that smart thermostats like that are deployed in mass will ever give all of the sensing capabilities that Sensi Predict had, or what it should have. What for systems that could be retrofitted, there are always options for additional sensors that should be able to help a HVAC practitioner to be able to do their job better. So, like, a good example is with Measure Quick. There's a whole bunch of probes that you can deploy that go far beyond what you can get off, like, as far as the data off of either a thermostat or even off of a communicating system. Like, even in the top of the line communicating systems out there, they definitely have way more diagnostics than they did have like a couple of years ago.
Right.
I've heard that a couple of manufacturers, when they were going through this big kind of refrigerant change, they actually decided it's just like, okay, we're going to overhaul everything. Let's overhaul our communications and sensing systems. Let's start putting in airflow sensors. Let's putting in all these other sensors. But like as kind of point number 3 on the screen shows, is that yes, it's great that they have all those sensors, but they end up being kind of closed systems that it's just difficult to extract your data from. You need to be an authorized dealer. Homeowners only get a little bit of benefit from it. And
Right.
also, manufacturers are not software companies. they're really good at making hardware, but they aren't always good at making software.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I think smart thermostats are, like you said, they're getting smarter, but they're going to plateau. There isn't so many insights you can gain from runtime and outdoor temperature versus indoor temperature and patterns like that. And they're not looking really at anything inside the equipment other than runtime. That's really their only input from the equipment is, okay, well, how long did it take to satisfy this thermostat on a 92-degree day today versus how long did it take last week when it's 92 degrees outside? And that's all the input it has. It has no idea whether you were baking cookies all day, and maybe that's why the unit ran longer. There's a lot more information that's needed to really do true monitoring and diagnostics.
There is, but kind of to this point, and to kind of some of the points on my next slide, is that there are like the mass market, thinking about trying to get to the mass market, thinking about trying to go bigger is a really good point, because when you have innovation that only stays within the world of early adopters, then your impact is very, very limited. And so
Right.
that was one of the, I think that was one of the challenges of Sensi Predict, is that it did only kind of cater to that early adopter crowd, and there wasn't any, like, the ecosystem. I like the term ecosystem. Like, when you start thinking about, what the future could hold, is where you have everything that's like interoperable somehow.
Yes.
Is that the Sensi Predict, there wasn't really an ecosystem around it. There was a manufacturer that had a great, like a really technically advanced product
Yep.
that was good for a very kind of niche application.
Mhm.
But it didn't kind of go further than that.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to grow a business and sustain a business just catering to the HVAC nerds. You've got to tap into the mass market. And that means you have to be aware of what their pain points are, what their goals are.
So then and that's kind of one of the things that I'd love to explore kind of over, if we do more of these live streams, is like, are we able to build a community of HVAC nerds who actually have a goal
Yeah.
to shift to be able to like, I guess, help create a mass market solution, but also has all the advanced features that we want the system to have. And not
Sure.
just advanced features, but like some of that openness or some of that interoperability. And we'll get to kind of those requirements a little bit later in the conversation here. But to just loop back to mass market, there definitely are platforms out there. So like, I know the Smart IC folks really good. Again, this is, we're not trying to promote any particular product,
Mhm.
but these guys, Smart AC, they're kind of gaining the most traction in the market right now to be able to be that type of mass market implementation who could really have a big impact at scale. So
Right.
those exist, but there are so many other examples out there of companies like in below, like Haven and AVX, has much smaller teams, which with like a little bit more of a niche and fewer resources, who they were trying to solve some really hard problems in a very innovative way. But what was the like what's the outcome, like, because there haven't been the same type of scale with
Right.
those companies as there was with Smart AC, and there hasn't been the same scale with, like, smart thermostats. Like, smart thermostats are everywhere. There's about 60% penetration now. Like,
Mhm.
as I kind of grabbed that stat yesterday.
Right.
But that's not the same for these types of diagnostic systems. So yeah, mass market,
Yes.
big
we have to think about what, just like what Chris Hamilton just said, we won't get mass market solutions without thinking about the mass market. And so there needs to be people that are in that space. I'm right now not in that space. In fact, even when I ran my contracting company, I was more on the early adopter, high performance. I wasn't really in that mass market mentality, but I think I know what a lot of the pain points are, and we certainly can get input on that from others. But that's really going to be the way forward. Is we have to figure out what, and they got to make money off of this. It has to provide enough value. The juice has to be worth the squeeze.
So that's a I've I wanted to update this because again, that's the whole point of this document, is that it's meant to be kind of a living requirements document.
Right.
I'll share this afterwards to anybody that wanted to comment or edit on it, because this should be done. I believe that as a community, there is a lot of value in kind of saying that we shouldn't just build something for us. We shouldn't just build something,
Yes.
that is like just the same Sensi Predict, or it has the best, like the latest and greatest sensors, because that will hit a very limited, adoption rate and have a limited
Right.
impact.
Yep. They may not make it, just like Sensi Predict, and then we're not doing anybody any good if we're bringing along technology the last couple of years and then just pisses off a bunch of contractors that implement it and then lose the support.
Yeah. And there's so, like, when you start looking at requirements, there's every I don't have the slide up, but I could probably find the I think it's like the requirements triangle, or it's like, do you want fast, do you want cheap, or do you
Right.
want good? You can only
You
have
get two
two.
at, yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah, and I believe in that, because I've been a part of, I spent the last 10 years in startups trying to hit the trifecta
Yeah.
altogether, and it is absolutely impossible. So there will always be limited requirements, but I would love to be like, as a community, what do the community members democratically believe that for the world of residential HVAC, what should the requirements be for a solution that's not just another Sensi Predict, but it
Yeah.
is something that can pull the market forward too. So
Well, and Ben Knopp makes a good point right here. If you want to put his last comment on there, this speaks to that, is making something modular, where you can check the boxes. You maybe could do all three if you made it modular, where the mass markets get a smaller kit, less sensors, something that's less expensive to put in, gives less information, but heck, they're not going to know what to do with more information anyway. And then you have another level, another tier, another module set of sensors. For example, like instead of looking at dry bulb and wet bulb temperature for maybe you have a lower tier that just looks at dry bulb temperature. And of course, you're going to get less insights on it, but it's something that is good enough for them. And people like power users will have the option of stepping up to actual hygrometers instead of just dry bulb sensors. That sort of example. Making it modular, I think, is a really good point. I've given that a lot of thought too.
yeah, but making something modular means that you're trading off a lot of other, functionality, or a lot of other attributes. So
Sure.
we'll dive a little bit deeper here.
Right.
So there's a kind of the third slide in this, what are the problems that we're solving, and like why are we doing this? There's also the bigger market opportunities where the new HVAC technology is becoming far more complex, which thus begets
Yes.
more complex requirements for monitoring. There's a massive skills gap right now, and I think some of these you added, Tim. So if you wanted to kind of go through.
Yeah, I think the skills gap is one of the biggest reasons why we should be able to get mass market adoption, because everybody is going to be facing that, especially the larger contractors, the mass market. We are not going to be able to have the percentage of experienced technicians that we had years ago, decades ago, going out there on jobs, and we're going to have to put butts in trucks. And what are some of the um, things that we can send less experienced people out there to do, and reserve the few more experienced people that we have for tasks that we really need them to do. And so I think that's why I love what MetroQuick is doing, and other contractors are making it happen, where they're hiring people from different industries, fast food industry, uh, office equipment repair industries, and they're just within a few weeks they're putting them out there doing maintenance on systems. Now, can that person go out and solve a complicated low voltage short? Probably not. Can they go out there and solve a weird comfort problem? No, they've only been in the industry for 8 weeks. But we reserve the few people in our shop to do that. Maybe those people are the ones that monitor this equipment every now and then. And then when we send someone out to do maintenance, they are not doing performance testing. They are cleaning, they're giving visual inspections, and we leave the performance testing remotely. We decouple that from the process, and we save that for people that can actually do it well.
So then it needs to be cost effective enough to do remote, like to basically have leave behinds at every house that have those capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I believe in remote monitoring, is because you can monitor that. If you've got a few hours for a good technician, you can put them on that and have them check 50 systems. Just check the history on them on a hot day. Just make sure they're working good. Or you can have them do it on a rainy day, and you can have them check the system, how it ran 3 days ago when it was hot. And now we start filling in some of those gaps in the schedule. So I think the skills gap is going to be driving a lot of things in the next few years, because it's here and it's only going to get worse.
So, but why does a technician need to do that analysis? What if you have enough intelligence in the background of the system that can actually pre-sort all those diagnoses or all
Oh yeah,
those problems, and
that
then basically do
that's a
auto
part of it.
dispatching? Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a part of it. I think a lot of the faults that these systems can detect I mean, that's the whole point, is that you're getting 90% of your diagnostics done before you even get out there. So if you've got a system that can read power factor on a system, and it starts seeing a degradation of power factor over time, then you know probably the capacitor's going bad. Well, it alerts you and you send a technician out there. Well, that's a really easy thing to diagnose in the field as well as remotely. But what about if you've got a dryer that's beginning to get stopped up? And that may be harder to diagnose if it's right there on the cusp where it's not quite causing a fault yet. You can diagnose that early and have some automatic faults and alerts being sent. And maybe a technician just kind of takes a look at it and says, yeah, this is looking like a bad dryer. We need to go ahead and send the right person out there. So you don't send a maintenance tech to that call. You make sure you send somebody out there that's going to be able to handle that kind of work.
Yeah. And kind of like in the past, something like Sensi Predict, it didn't, like, as I kind of flashed up a couple of things from Chris here, is that Sensi Predict was supposed to do all of those things. That
Yes,
was the
that's
that
what it
was the
was.
promise.
Yep.
And I think that's where there's a lot of other companies that they watched that happen, and they probably interviewed all of the contractors and even customers of Sensi Predict who would have done that type of deployment and been like, okay, so where's the gap? Like, how
Yeah.
do we actually identify how to fill that gap for you? And Chris just kind of put in another comment here where it's just like, hey, look, here's another way to be able to fill this gap, where you end up you can string together a bunch of other options out there. Like XOI is an amazing example of this type of software where they're not deploying hardware kits solutions themselves, but they massively multiply their force multiplier for HVAC companies, for HVAC technicians. I've heard a lot of really good things about them.
I'm not
And very
familiar with them.
with XOI. Oh yeah,
No.
you should check them out. And
Gotcha.
similar to Smart AC is that they're trying to avoid repeating kind of a lot of the old way of trying to solve these problems. So
Yeah.
there are options that are trying to, I guess, address the gap that already existed, like that was in the market when Sensi Predict was active.
Right.
And they'll continue to, address that problem. But I still think that there's another angle, is that there's kind of this missing piece, kind of related to this like lack of openness, and possibly even this lack of some of this modularity, where that's still not something that's solved. And so to kind of, to on those points, is that like, why isn't something like Smart AC and Haven, Smart AC, Haven, XOI, like any of these new pieces of innovation, because some of them are hardware only, or some of them are hardware driven platforms, some of them are more software driven platforms, but why aren't they good enough? Like, why isn't there something out there that already solves that problem? And then what's stopping the majority market from adopting these solutions in mass? Is it just that they don't know? Is it that they're not aware that, Haven, Smart AC, XOI, AVX, any of these alternatives? There's dozens of others that I haven't listed there, so I'm trying, just these are the ones that I'm more familiar with. So why aren't these being adopted at scale?
Yeah, and I think awareness is one thing. We don't see um, displays of these at our local supply house. We don't see reps contacting in mass contractors. Um, we just don't see it. I mean, it's a matter of education and awareness. And also, the contractor has to be able to see. Unfortunately, contractors, and in a lot of ways, they have to be, but have to be a little short-sighted. Uh, is this thing going to make? Is this thing going to help me turn a profit on it this year? Is this worth it? And so, is this going to drive more sales? And the majority of companies, and it's just the way economy is set up and the way the industry has gone. Um, Sales oriented, trying to sell either a new unit, accessories, that sort of thing. And because those are high profit margin jobs. So, how does something like this sell more units? And because in fact, in the previous slide, I have a line in there, because we are so energy efficient, um, trained as consumers, that being able to show somebody that your system is not operating efficiently anymore could be a good sales tool if it was actually adopted.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to quantify running SEER, and man, you need very little to actually be able to do that. Airflow is the biggest thing you've got to know, which is probably a hard get, but being able to quantify the running SEER of the system. If this whole industry is all SEER fixated, and being able to say, well, you do realize that they make 20 SEER units right now, and your unit's only working at 11 SEER. Um, that could be a good sales tool for those people that sell like that.
Yeah, I would agree. So if we don't have anybody from the audience that are wanted to add some comments on, why there hasn't actually been in their opinion, why there hasn't been a perfect solution yet, then we can come back to this. But
Sure.
let's kind of start moving into looking at a bit of a case study of what Sensi offered, where it was quite capable. It had it had the supply line, the return line, the suction line, liquid line, or not line. Sorry, what I said earlier was a line. I should have said supply air, return air, for
Yes.
temperatures. And then it went on to having the refrigerants, so for supply, suction and liquid, and
Yep.
then the voltage for the current control lines, and then the outdoor voltage as well. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that you could do with that.
Right.
Had a lot of capabilities. So, and they did provide real-time alerts. They provide kind of those live performance checks. They had, with just that set of sensors, and they even are able to tie into the thermostat to be able to know what's being called for.
Yep.
That's another big one, that
Yep.
if you know what's being called for, and then you see that it's not meeting the, what was expected,
Yes.
that is that's the best way to confirm it. I know that there's some other approaches where you don't tie into the thermostat, and then you have to infer what the system is
Right.
trying to do. And that makes it so much more harder to do the kind of computation around it.
Yeah, you end up, I think, having to build an alert system that is um, so slow to react. And so, for example, anyone following my content in the last couple of months knows I've been messing around with reheat dehumidification on my little Bosch unit. And so I've got a smart AC on it. And there are times when it was 85 degrees outside and my system was dehumidifying. So it was running cooling plus strip heat. So my supply air temperature was actually 78 degrees. So 85 degrees outside. It was sensing a temperature rise and I got zero alerts. Now, that should have given me an alert any day of the week. But obviously, I was doing that on purpose. But I think they end up having to dumb down their alerts a lot just because they had no idea whether the unit's just sitting there. Maybe it's 85 degrees in the vent because it's in a duct in an attic. My system isn't running, and it's getting that heat through conduction through the ducts, and just the heat is reaching that sensor. So that's what you end up doing when you don't have the input of the thermostat and then looking for the feedback from the sensors.
Yeah. But then one of the challenges, though, because this goes back to balancing those requirements, is that when you choose to wire everything in, you're going to be there a lot longer to do the install. Like you're getting, finding a way to be able to connect to that, like the control board on the system. So whether you're splicing wires or, wire terminals, every wire terminal is like, that's at least 10, 20 seconds to be able to, pop one open, put it back in, make sure that it's nice and tight. You're drilling holes all over the place. You're taking things apart. So like I think that's another one of the big things, is that with all of the promises that, the Sensi Predict system was able to put forward, I don't think that there was a lot of, even though there are contractors, there were hundreds of contractors that tried to adopt it. It kind of peaked there because it is really onerous for they only got a minimal amount of value out of it. And so I don't think, I think that kind of one of the hypotheses of saying like, hey, we should replace Sensi Predict, the answer should be no. We shouldn't replace Sensi Predict because it didn't actually make enough of an impact in the market.
Right.
And like but it was something that you didn't know until you actually tried to deploy it. And they provided like so many resources. Duplicate slide here. I meant to do some additional copying and pasting. Like they supported their contractors to build out the business models. Like a lot of they pioneered doing this type of sensing on an advanced angle. And then I think a lot of other companies watched what they did, and then they kind of picked the good things and tried to avoid the bad things. And so that's what I think a lot of these other smarts or these other HVAC diagnostics platforms out there are doing. And that's also what we should discuss. And if there isn't a modular option out there that is able to kind of like have that type of scalability and openness with the data to be able to achieve, what we think is the missing market gap, then we should also try to learn from mistakes and not recreate a mousetrap that didn't work very well.
Right. Yeah. If all we're trying to do is recreate Sensi, then we've learned nothing from history. So, yeah, good points from Chris, and you're not dominating the chat at all. We really appreciate your feedback. Yeah, we've got a lot of different things we're trying to fix here. Are we trying to bridge a skills gap? Are we trying to make contractors more profitable? Are we doing this for electrification? Are we just trying to serve the home automation nerd out there? And I think what you said earlier, Ben, we're not going to be able to make everybody happy with one solution, but I think making something modular might make it a little, you may be able to serve a few more communities that way. Because like for me, I have no interest really in total home automation. I just want to be able to monitor my HVAC system. I could care less whether I turn on the light in my bathroom over there. I mean, and I'm just one example. Now, you, on the other hand, you got every single light in your house on a Wi-Fi switch, and that's cool for you. But it just goes to show that we've got two different things. I want to be able to see the psychrometrics of my HVAC system. That may not be as important to you. So we got to try to figure out who we're trying to reach. And that's a great point, Chris.
And I think I'll just skip ahead a little bit, because it's like what's already out there. Like what we'll do after this is I'll go out and I'll build out a couple of other assets, which are like, what is within a competitive landscape, like, what is this missing hole that is kind of somewhere between smart AC, Sensi Predict, smart thermostats, and the other options like the manufacturer based IoT systems, like that are kind of built in to these communicating systems. Right. Is that I do believe that there is a sweet spot there that is still unmet in the market, and maybe the customers end up being still a little bit more in a bit of a niche, where maybe this niche is more about trying to prove out to create these types of modular success stories that, like, maybe it's collaborating with utility providers, maybe it's collaborating with programs that are dealing with low-income housing. Maybe it's maybe it's a modular platform that is meant to kind of fill that void that is accessible. Maybe it's open source. Maybe it is entirely customizable, to this type of audience, where you can package it into these pieces that that kind of, it doesn't collide and compete with any of the other options that are on the market, but perhaps it fills that void that is currently unfilled. And so, right, like, thinking of the void, like on the competitive landscape side, is that there's, like, on the pro options for residential HVAC monitoring, this is a very kind of slapped together list, which is not what's it called? It's non-conclusive. So there's a whole bunch more information that we need to put on here. But like on the pro kind of HVAC side, there's a bunch of stuff already on the market. On the commercial side, there are just thousands and thousands of options, and so it doesn't really make sense to try to build anything that fits into that. On the high end home side, there's a lot of companies, Savant and Control 4, they're just kind of like one of many that deal with kind of high end home automation systems. So you're talking about, like, big 10,000 foot homes where the budget for the home automation and HVAC sort of upgrades might be like $200,000 to $400,000, right. Which that's untouchable for, like, there's definitely a niche of providers out there that do that very well. Sure. But again, I think it's a solved problem.
Yeah.
We're not providing, like, we're not really focused on kind of, providing features for consumers here. Are we? Like, is that something that we, as kind of this HVAC nerd space, and I want to kind of hear from the audience as I'm kind of rattling through these things, like, if there was a community that was built to try to, like, to try to solve this at a bigger level, like, what are the problems that we're trying to solve? Are we going to be building something for, that all of these stakeholders are going to benefit from? Because I think if you build something that tries to cater to everyone, then it's going to be crap for everyone. It's not going to be good for any one particular person.
Well, we'll let a few comments come in, but I think it's sort of what are your goals? And for me, where I'm coming from in this webinar, what I want to get is something that's close to what Sensi Predict did. Gives you the monitoring, gives you the remote diagnosis at an affordable price for mainstream adoption. Simplicity that we need to add that. There needs to be a way to make it simple. So, I mean, I think those markets that you just mentioned there, you can hit a lot of pain points with a Sensi Predict on steroids that somehow was cheaper and somehow simpler to install. That's where the difficulty is how do you make all those people happy, and it's not a $1,200 wholesale price to the contractor. And so it would just, prices yourself out of the market. But for me, I think that serving for example, let's take property owners and landlords, apartment complexes. If you had some kind of HVAC monitoring on there, all those they never have enough maintenance people. During the summertime, I knew quite a few apartment maintenance people. They worked constantly. They were burned out. They were out just. I mean, it was like trying to swat flies. But if you had a system there that monitor the HVAC systems and prioritize the actual problems from the problems of the person just didn't close their window and it's July and that's why it's hot in their house or hot in their apartment. If you can prioritize that and predict failures, I think there's huge value in predictive maintenance and predicting failures. And that serves all of those markets. You got a commercial building with 20 rooftop units. There's huge value in being able to predict failures there. And maybe they don't care about the psychrometric portion of it, but they do want the predictive portion of it. And I think you can get both with the same amount of sensors. And so why not have options for both?
But is that the problem that needs to be solved? Is it like trying to address multifamily homes or like multifamily complexes that that don't have enough maintenance? Is that the problem? That's
right.
And that's the conundrum of any kind of product development exercise, is that you can't cater to all of those problems at once. And so I think that there's I guess I have a bit of an agenda, is that there will always be like if the problem is obvious enough and the technology is capable, there will always be another company that comes along and just builds something for that niche, and it will fill that niche well, and that will be a good thing for the market. That's usually how it works. But there is, I think, this other side of innovation that the residential HVAC industry is poised for, where HVAC nerds can kind of all band together to build kind of a bigger project where, yes, it is kind of more for HVAC nerds, like in its early iterations, but perhaps it ends up creating innovations that actually will reverberate out into the market, where we're not trying to create a solution for these for these segments, or specifically for these types of audiences. Maybe we're creating examples of what could and what should exist, and we're telling those stories in a very strong and compelling way. And maybe we ally ourselves with some manufacturers and with some other providers to be able to, to create something that hasn't really existed before. Now, I know that I'm talking about that in a bit of an abstract way, and I want to go back to kind of this, landscape of what is available on the market, and kind of this leads into this kind of prosumer and DIY home automation. And one of the things that you had, both myself and some other people on your LinkedIn had commented on, is that there's this platform called Home Assistant that's out there. And this is what I use extensively in my own house. How I actually am connected to, I have hundreds of sensors and other lights and things that I've deployed across my home from dozens of different vendors. I've built my own IQ sensors. I've built my own, automated, window openers with linear actuators and other things like that. It is basically a platform of building blocks that connects to absolutely everything else in the ecosystem. What I've found is that residential HVAC is just a whole bunch of building blocks, and there's all these restrictions on how to connect these building blocks together because of either vendor lock-ins, or just that there isn't a control system that's good enough to be able to kind of solve that problem. And so having like a building blockable system that not only can do like just diagnostics, but it can also solve the HVAC side or the automation side, I think is really the sweet spot that should be focused on. If there was some sort of a community project that could fill that unmet need of the market, where through the storytelling, because with the innovation that happens within a community like Home Assistant, like a lot of the sensors become open source. The community has gotten so big that I think there's like 200,000 installations. There's 200,000 active members on their forums, and they have influenced other manufacturers to be
Yeah.
able to change the way that they produce products. And then they're staying, because they have such an active community of developers, they're staying tightly integrated with a lot of the kind of new innovations that are out there.
Mhm.
Where like there was a comment here about matter and threat, is there's so much happening in the world of home automation and like wireless connectivity and kind of microcontroller technology, that I think that if you were to create a project that was this type of like modular building blocks platform for being able to do diagnostics and automation that is open, where people can contribute their time, they can use, they can build upon all these open source frameworks that are already available, and then they can benefit each other by, like, if you have one guy who's making code, it's compatible with the piece of hardware that this other person is building in this other part of the
Mhm.
country, and then you can all band together and like purchase products in mass, like purchase these prototypes with these new development boards in mass in like kind of a group buy, like a crowd supply type of scenario. So I guess what I'm kind of getting towards, and I didn't think we would kind of get here as early as we would, is that I think the goal that I would love to see is this type of like an open source diagnostics and automation project for HVAC, for residential HVAC.
Right. Yeah, and perhaps the piece of hardware that we're talking about is a simple I/O board that is very modular, where you've got a pack of sensors that you can connect or not connect, and then whatever operating system that this thing talks to um, gives you options based on those sensors and what you want to do. And so it's, instead of making it so specific that we're trying to serve one particular market, we can still make it very accessible, uh, just by making it modular, making it like Legos, where you can build what the picture on the box is, or you can combine it with other Lego kits, and you can build whatever you imagine. Something like that. I think it's a cool time to be in the HVAC industry.
It's potentially a cool time, but I'm interested in any of the audience that are still hanging on. Uh, is this something that you would value? Is this something that would actually be of use to you, where it is not just, maybe it's compatible with Home Assistant, but it is a purpose-built system for you to be able to create diagnostic and control sequences for something that just doesn't exist on the market? Is that something that anybody would actually be interested in? Or is that a bridge too far, and that we maybe it needs to the scope would need to change if other people wanted to kind of see a project like this take off?
Yeah, good question.
So we'll wait to see if any of the comments come in on that.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I guess we're also getting close to time. So again, this was a bit of an experiment just to kind of do a little bit of exploration with you, Tim. There was a whole section that I thought we were going to be spending our time on here, which is trying to get the requirements of like what should a system do for diagnostics. Should it have all the same functionality of Sensi Predict? And I think I ended up bypassing that because like it was very clear, just being like, no, we shouldn't build another Sensi Predict.
Right. But there needs to be a business model around, and I've got the slide open right now, the slides 19, where it's a screenshot from Overholt Heating and Air, which apparently I really feel bad for them, because they apparently have implemented a lot of Sensis. and they had they've got different service plans based on that. So, but I think that's important, is that you have to build a business model around where contractors can make money off of this. There has to be something in it for the homeowner. The homeowner gets less people in their house. The contractor has to send people out less times. He can have more customers with less employees, and you don't. But the systems still get maintained just as well as they should have always been. And yeah, we've got that question down there. If it's an IO board that's modular with sensors, do you see that a contractor driven or homeowner driven? Definitely contractor driven, but there are enough smart homeowners out there, it should be available to them. We don't want to.
I believe that there will be there will be many homeowners. Like maybe the ratio would be a 4-to-1 with like HVAC professionals, or maybe more of a like 5 or 6-to-1, where it's mostly HVAC professionals that are kind of deploying this. But there are definitely a lot of smarts and techie homeowners that are automating their homes that could definitely integrate or benefit from this type of thing.
Yeah, possibly a lot of voided warranties from manufacturers if a lot of homeowners get involved with this too. That's a whole other side of it that we haven't talked about.
It's a whole nother side, but it's actually something that I want to kind of like, if this becomes a thing, I would want that to be kind of one of the goals, is where it shouldn't be an adversarial relationship. There should be a feedback loop with whatever this is. Should be like, hey, we're actually doing some of the work for you for free because you guys haven't done it. So just adopt these concepts, just try to do better. Here's an experiment that we did because we didn't see it being done anywhere else, and we didn't see this innovation being kind of fed back into the market.
Yeah, that would be key. Lots of good comments coming in.
Oh, this is the first one where all right, so I guess we already have an order for a batch of these diagnostics platforms.
I love the comment there about predictive maintenance with Fujitsu. Not to throw any, with mini split leaks. This is one thing that we're going to have to face. We've got systems that hold a lot less refrigerant than they ever have, especially when A2Ls hit the market. And so the difference between the system performing at peak efficiency and the system not performing at peak efficiency is going to be like a fly snot bubbles worth of refrigerant leak. And if we can catch that early, then that is worth it. And I think that's refrigerant leaks are going to continue to be a big thing, and it's going to take less time for them to actually impact the performance and the efficiency of the units.
And so the business case side, like when you said that would be worth it, now what would that be worth? Now, if when we're going to go through this and doing this, maybe more of these sessions, maybe I'll do some work in trying to build out the business cases of being like, what would it actually take if you had, because if you wanted to deploy, let's say 10,000 of these types of platforms, what cost threshold do they need to hit to be able to outweigh the actual, because if you calculate out the cost of, the impact to the market, is that if you don't have this type of monitoring technology, then is it the cost of the environment? How do you quantify that to say that this many refrigerant leaks in the wild equals this much money? This many service calls equal this much money. This many warranties equal this much money. Because if it is very clear on doing kind of a business case of saying that, like, without automation in these particular areas, then this is the result. And even if, like, to me, even if there's like all these embodiments, like where you have these like maybe teams set up, where you have like a functional team that's focusing on being like, okay, here's what we think is a big problem in the market that could be solved with this type of a previously unmet approach for diagnostics and automation, is that let's actually focus on this type of problem. Let's prove out the use case, and let's actually prove out the ROI of deploying it in this particular manner. And then maybe present that to the rest of the market and be like, there you go. Just somebody now either scale this, or maybe this can be scaled on its own as a standalone company or something like that.
Yeah.
Because and actually now, even though we're at the end of the webinar, I do want to say that that's one of the big reasons where, like, in my gut, I'm just like, something like this needs to exist, because there are so many HVAC experts like yourself and like Ben Knopp and like many others that I've met, who they're always there's just always complaining about being like, oh, there's this new thing, this new problem that is happening because this manufacturer didn't think of this, or because this incentive program is doing this. And the people, whether they're manufacturers or the policymakers or distributors, they seem to be so disconnected from the front lines. And so, like, even if this was kind of like a bit of a like an open, like a project to bring the attention to all those issues that are so big in the industry, and I'm kind of like setting up these groups of professionals who are so passionate about trying to solve these bigger picture problems. They prove out with empirical evidence, here's an exploratory experiment that, like, we proved out the technical side of it, and we also proved out the business case. This needs to change, and here's all the evidence, and then go. That would be a very interesting application of this.
You would think that would work, but Blockbuster had a chance to buy out Netflix in the 90s, and they didn't see the value in it because they didn't understand the end user. And so
it would have to be paired. In my mind, like, and I've been thinking about this, it would have to be paired with the proper connections to the to the people that actually can make a difference. Right. So like we need to have, like, it would have to take a lot of coordination. But I think I've met enough people that really care about this that I think it could happen.
Yeah. And you think, like, security companies, they have a very similar model. They have hardware that they monitor, and they charge you a fee for it, and they make money. So we've got this whole other side of the house that doesn't get monitored that is really, really important and really, really expensive when it breaks down. That it is untapped. It does need to be solved. It does need to be addressed. It can be done.
I think we're in a time of unconventional problems, and in that kind of time, I believe unconventional solutions are also required. So I'll maybe leave it at that. Maybe we can sign off. It was a good start, a little messy. So thanks for everyone that stuck around with my blabbering that I was doing, of trying to explore the thoughts in my head. And thank you, Tim, for spending time here and joining me. And I think there's a bunch of work that I got to do on, turning this into, instead of just a whole bunch of hypotheses, into a couple of proposals.
Yeah, but this is how this stuff gets started. If it's not on this, it's in a diner on the back of a napkin. But that's hard. That's how we do this. To the Blockbuster, Netflix point, large manufacturers buying up separately successful controls monitoring companies and build their business. Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing is just the corporate side of it that I don't understand, where companies are owned by different companies, and it's a constant moving target, and trying to talk to the right people when they're about to get bought out next week. That's a whole different side of it.
Yeah, and I guess final thought related to that is those types of mergers and acquisitions, they are sometimes good, but if you look at the history of the market, is that a lot of times something gets eaten up, and then maybe the direction of the company might shift, the resources of that company might shift. So whatever Motilli was solving, it might now be redirected. It might now not kind of be in line with its original, I guess, mission and vision. I've worked with startup companies that have been had conversations with many a different potential buyer. And that always is a concern, is that when acquisitions happen, then is it going to continue on the same route? And that goes for the HVAC 2.0 crew last night. They were talking about, the private equity, and how private equity is coming into the HVAC contractor market and is just buying up companies everywhere. And then it's shifting how those companies are able to solve problems within their local ecosystem. Is that they oftentimes get gutted, and they get told to just kind of, it's like, now you're a part of the Borg. And so as a part of the Borg, you're now just going to kind of follow this agenda. And, but there's always room for kind of this innovation that is not kind of in this monoculture, I guess, focus. And I believe that something like this could be a bit of an antithesis to, not really an antithesis, but like a complement to all of the good work that's already being done in the market, but it's filling in those gaps of things that just aren't being solved really well and stories that aren't being told very well.
Great way to end it.
So anyways, thanks everyone. And maybe we'll do this again soon. So I'll just pay attention to mine and Tim's LinkedIn probably to learn if we're doing this again.
Yeah, cool. Enjoyed it. Take care, y'all.